The first champagne glass hit the floor before Claire Bennett realized the old woman couldn't breathe. 1 second, the ballroom of the Whitmore Grand Hotel was glowing with crystal chandeliers, soft music, and the quiet laughter of people who never checked prices before ordering dinner. The next, an elderly woman at table 12 was gripping her throat. Her face had gone red. Then gray. People stood. Nobody moved. Claire dropped her tray onto the nearest table. Can you hear me? The woman shook her head. Claire stepped behind her. 1 thrust. Nothing. A second. The woman made a terrible choking sound. A third. A piece of food fell onto the white tablecloth. The woman gasped. The entire table exhaled. Claire steadied her before her knees gave way. Easy, Claire whispered. Just breathe. The woman's trembling hand closed around Claire's wrist. Thank you. Claire smiled, though her own heart was pounding. You're okay. A shadow fell across the table. Grant Mercer, the hotel's general manager, stood beside her. His tuxedo was perfect. His expression was not. Claire. She already knew that tone. I'm sorry. I saw her choking. You abandoned the north section. Claire looked at him. She couldn't breathe. And now she can. The old woman frowned. Young man, she saved my life. Grant immediately softened his face. Of course. And we're very grateful. Then he looked back at Claire. Return to your station. Claire picked up her tray. The old woman caught her hand again. Your mother raised you right. Claire froze. Just for a second. Then she smiled. She did. She walked away before the woman could see what those words had done to her. 4 years. It had been 4 years that night since Claire had sat beside a hospital bed holding her mother's hand while a machine counted down the final hours of Evelyn Bennett's life. 4 years since her mother had whispered one last strange instruction. Claire could still hear her voice. Thin. Tired. But certain. There's a letter in my old recipe book. Claire had leaned closer. What letter? For Thomas Whitmore. The name had meant nothing to her then. Her mother had squeezed her hand. Give it to him when the whole family is together. Claire had asked why. Evelyn had closed her eyes. Because that's when the truth will be hardest to hide. Tonight, every member of the Whitmore family was inside the hotel. The Centennial Gala celebrated 100 years since the hotel's founding. Thomas Whitmore himself stood beneath a massive portrait of his grandfather, accepting handshakes from senators, business owners, and people Claire had only seen on television. And inside Claire's apron pocket was the letter. She had carried it for 4 years. The envelope was yellowed at the edges. A dark red wax seal marked the back. On the front, in faded handwriting, were the words. For Thomas Whitmore. When the whole family is together. Claire had almost left it at home. She had told herself it was none of her business. Her mother was gone. Old family secrets should stay buried. But then she had looked at the date. 4 years exactly. So she brought it. At 9:17 p.m., Thomas Whitmore left the ballroom and walked toward the private founders gallery. Claire's chest tightened. This was the moment. She set her tray down. 2 minutes, she told another waitress. Then she followed him. The gallery doors were closing when she slipped through. Mr. Whitmore? Thomas turned. He was taller than Claire expected. Gray head. Tied around the eyes. Yes? Claire reached into her pocket. Before she could take out the envelope, another voice cut across the room. What are you doing in here? Grant Mercer strode toward her. Claire's stomach dropped. I need to give Mr. Whitmore something. You're assigned to the ballroom. It's personal. Grant saw the envelope. His expression changed. Not confusion. Recognition. Give me that. Claire pulled it closer. No. Thomas frowned. Grant. Grant stepped between them. This employee entered a restricted area without permission. I just need 30 seconds. You need to return to your station. Claire looked at Thomas. My mother told me to give you this. Grant reached for the envelope. Claire stepped back. Don't touch it. Several guests had now gathered near the open doors. Grant's face hardened. "Do you understand where you are?" Claire said nothing. Grant pointed toward the exit. "You don't belong here." The words struck harder than Claire expected. Not because of him. Because years earlier, her mother had once told her something while Claire cried after being thrown out of a private school event where she had been working. "Never let another person decide whether you belong in a room." Claire looked down at the envelope. Her mother's second instruction came back to her. "If they refuse to hear you, open it." Grant reached again. Claire broke the wax seal. "Don't," Grant said. Too late. Claire unfolded the page. The first line stopped her breathing. Thomas stepped closer. "What does it say?" Claire looked up. Then she read. "Thomas, if you are reading this, then I failed to bring your sister Evelyn home." Somewhere behind them, a glass hit the floor. Thomas Whitmore went completely still. Grant's face lost its color. Claire looked between them. Nobody spoke. Thomas finally whispered one word. "Evelyn?" Claire's fingers tightened around the letter. Thomas stared at the handwriting. Then at her. "Where did you get my father's letter?" "My mother left it to me." His eyes lifted slowly. "What was your mother's name?" Claire swallowed. "Evelyn." Thomas looked as if someone had taken the air from the room. And for the first time that night, Claire understood that the letter in her hands was not bringing her into an old family story. It was tearing one open. Thomas ordered the gallery doors closed. The music from the ballroom disappeared. So did the smiles. Only 5 people remained. Claire. Thomas. Grant. Thomas's daughter, Charlotte. And a security guard who stood near the door until Thomas quietly told him to leave. Grant immediately spoke. "This could be a scam." Claire looked at him. "I didn't ask for anything." "You entered a restricted area carrying a letter supposedly written by Arthur Whitmore." "Supposedly?" Grant pointed at the paper. "We don't know where you got it." Claire folded the letter. "Then I'm leaving." Thomas looked up. "No." Claire stopped. He lowered his voice. "Please." That word sounded difficult for him. Claire stayed. Thomas moved toward her. "My sister's name was Evelyn Whitmore." Claire's face tightened. "My mother's name was Evelyn Bennett." "How old was she?" 54 when she died." Thomas looked away. The numbers fit. Charlotte studied Claire carefully. "Do you have any proof?" Claire almost laughed. "Proof of what?" "That my mother existed. That she was the same Evelyn." Claire reached beneath the collar of her uniform and pulled out a thin silver chain. A small oval locket rested against her skin. "My mother gave me this." Thomas saw it. His hand gripped the back of a chair. "Open it." Claire hesitated. Then she did. Inside was a faded photograph. 2 teenagers stood beside the hotel's old stone fountain. One was a smiling girl with dark hair. The other was a thin boy trying not to smile. Thomas sat down. Charlotte looked at him. "Dad." Thomas did not answer. He stared at the locket. "I gave her that." Claire felt something shift inside her. "No." Thomas looked up. "I bought it with money from my first summer job." "My mother never said anything about you." The words came out sharper than Claire intended. Thomas flinched. Grant stepped forward. "Old photographs can be copied." Claire turned on him. "Why are you so desperate for this not to be true?" "I'm desperate to protect this family." "From what?" "People who see a wealthy name and suddenly remember a connection." Claire's face hardened. She pulled the locket from her neck. "Keep it." Thomas stared at her. "What?" "Keep the letter too." She placed both on the table. "I came here because my mother asked me to. I did it. I don't want your money. I don't want your hotel. And I definitely don't want to stand in a room where I have to prove my mother was real." She turned toward the door. Thomas spoke behind her. "When you were frightened, what did she tell you?" Claire stopped. "What?" Evelyn had something she used to say. Claire slowly faced him. Thomas continued. "Something our mother taught us." Claire said nothing. Thomas looked at her. Did she ever tell you to count 5 lights? Claire's face changed. Thomas's voice softened. Count 5 lights and come back to yourself. Claire whispered the rest. Because fear gets smaller when the room gets bigger. Thomas closed his eyes. Grant said nothing. Charlotte stared at Claire. That sentence had never been written in a newspaper. Never placed in a family biography. It belonged to a mother who had died before Claire was born. Thomas opened his eyes again. She was my sister. Claire's throat tightened. The room suddenly felt too small. Her phone rang. Everyone jumped. Claire pulled it from her pocket. Owen. She answered immediately. Hey. Are you coming home? Her voice softened. I'm leaving soon. You said before 10. I know. There was a pause. Mrs. Carter fell asleep. Claire almost smiled. Is she snoring? Really loud. Okay. Brush your teeth. I'll be home before you fall asleep. Promise. Promise. She hung up. Thomas was watching her. Your son? My brother. Thomas looked confused. How old? 10. His mother? Claire's expression answered before her words did. Same as mine. Thomas sat back. Evelyn had another child. Yes. What happened to his father? He's not around. Thomas stared at the floor. 2 children. His sister had raised 2 children. Worked. Gotten sick. Died. And he had known none of it. How did she die? Cancer. Thomas's jaw tightened. When? 4 years ago tonight. Silence. Claire looked around the gallery. Gold frames. Polished wood. Portraits of people whose last name she had apparently been born with. My mother worked until 3 weeks before she died, Claire said. Thomas closed his eyes. Grant moved toward the table. We should stop this until attorneys are present. Thomas ignored him. He turned the letter over. Something near the broken wax caught his attention. A line written in different handwriting. He read it silently. Then passed the envelope to Claire. She recognized the writing immediately. Her mother's. I couldn't forgive him while I was alive. Maybe you can learn why. Claire looked up. Thomas was staring at her. She felt the first warmth of possibility disappear. What did you do to her? Thomas did not answer immediately. That told Claire more than an answer would have. She folded her arms. What did you do? Charlotte glanced at her father. Dad. Thomas slowly sat down. 30 years ago, money disappeared from the Whitmore Children's Foundation. Claire waited. How much? Almost $2 million. Grant added, far more in today's money. Claire ignored him. Thomas continued. The transfers were traced to accounts your mother could access. My mother? Evelyn worked with the foundation. And you believe she stole it? Thomas looked at the floor. The documents said she did. Claire gave a small, disbelieving laugh. My mother once walked 3 miles back to a grocery store because a cashier gave her $20 too much. Thomas looked up. Claire stepped closer. She counted coupons at the kitchen table. She wore the same winter coat for 11 years. When I was 16, she took money out of our grocery jar to pay for another kid's school lunch because his mother had lost her job. Her eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. You can tell me she was angry. You can tell me she was stubborn. You can tell me she made mistakes. Claire pointed at the letter. But don't tell me she was a thief. Thomas said quietly, she said the same thing. Claire froze. What? The night she left. The room became silent again. Thomas looked older now. She said I could call her difficult. Proud. Reckless. But not a thief. Claire stared at him. Her mother's exact rhythm. Her mother's way of defending herself. Charlotte touched the old letter. If Evelyn was trying to prove something, maybe she left more than this. Claire looked down at the words. Then a memory surfaced. Her mother at the kitchen sink. Claire had been 14, complaining about losing something important. Evelyn had smiled and said, "The kitchen keeps what the family throws away." Claire had assumed she was joking. Now she looked at Thomas. "Did my mother ever work here?" Grant answered too quickly. "No." Thomas turned. "Yes." Grant went quiet. Thomas continued. "After my father cut off her access to the family accounts, she worked in the hotel kitchen for several months." Claire looked toward the gallery doors. "The kitchen keeps what the family throws away." Thomas stood. "What?" "Something she used to say." The original hotel kitchen had been remodeled twice, but part of the old service wing remained below the ballroom. Grant objected immediately. "That section isn't safe." Claire looked at him. "Then stay here." She walked out. Thomas followed. So did Charlotte. Grant had no choice but to come with them. The old service corridor smelled of dust and detergent. Claire walked past locked storage rooms and faded staff notices. Thomas stopped near an old pastry kitchen. This was hers. Claire looked at him. "How do you know?" "She used to bring me things she'd baked." He almost smiled. "Usually burned." For the first time, Claire saw something in Thomas besides guilt. A brother. Not the brother he had become. The one he had once been. Claire entered the old room. Most of it was empty. A sink. Broken shelves. One wooden wall panel slightly darker than the rest. She touched it. It moved. Grant stepped forward. "Claire." She pulled. The panel came loose. Something fell behind it. A photograph. An old employee badge. Several folded pages. Claire picked up the photograph first. Evelyn stood in a white kitchen uniform surrounded by hotel workers. She was laughing so hard her eyes were almost closed. Claire had never seen her mother look like that. Not before bills. Not before cancer. Not before years of being tired. She turned the photograph over. Written on the back were the words, "The first place I was treated like I belonged." Thomas took the picture with trembling fingers. Claire watched him touch his sister's face. Then she picked up the pages. Dates. Account numbers. Transfers. Charlotte leaned closer. "These look like foundation transactions." One name appeared again and again. Mercer. Claire slowly turned. Grant's face had hardened. "Your father?" she asked. Grant's voice became cold. "My father served this family for 40 years. Claire held up the papers. "Then what is his name doing here?" "Those notes prove nothing." "Good." Grant frowned. Claire stepped closer. "Then the truth shouldn't hurt him." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Thomas took the pages. His eyes scanned them. Robert handled the foundation accounts. Grant said, "Along with 6 other people." Thomas kept reading. Claire found one final sheet. She unfolded it. At the bottom, in her mother's handwriting, were 7 words. Thomas signed it. "He doesn't know what he signed." Claire read the sentence twice. Then she looked at Thomas. His face told her he knew exactly what it meant. "Signed what?" Thomas did not answer. Claire walked toward him. "What did you sign?" Thomas looked at Charlotte. "Bring me the foundation archives." Grant stepped between them. "This is getting out of control." Thomas's voice changed. "Move." Grant moved. 20 minutes later, Charlotte returned carrying a thin archival box. Claire stood beside the old kitchen table while Thomas opened it. Inside were reports from 30 years earlier. Financial statements. Internal memos. Copies of checks. Then one document. Thomas stopped. Claire saw his name at the bottom. Thomas Whitmore. His signature. "What is that?" Thomas did not touch it. Charlotte read the first page. A request to freeze Evelyn Whitmore's accounts and refer suspected financial misconduct to investigators. Claire stared at Thomas. "You signed it." Thomas closed his eyes. Claire's voice rose. "You signed it." "I was told the evidence was conclusive." "By who?" Thomas looked toward Grant. "Robert Mercer." Grant said, "My father is dead." Claire turned on him. "So is my mother." Thomas stepped forward. Claire. She backed away. No. There is something else you need to know. She laughed bitterly. There's more? Thomas looked at her. Evelyn was my younger sister. Claire already knew. Yet hearing him say it clearly still felt impossible. Your mother was Evelyn Whitmore. Thomas swallowed. Which means you're my niece. Claire stared at him. My uncle. The word sounded foreign. Thomas nodded. And Owen is my nephew. For one brief second, something broke open inside Claire. A family. Her mother had a family. Claire had spent her entire childhood believing there was nobody. No grandparents. No cousins. No uncle. No one who might come when the car broke down. No one who might sit beside her at the hospital. No one who knew what Evelyn looked like at 17. Thomas reached into the archival box. He removed another photograph. Evelyn stood in a summer dress beside the hotel fountain. Young. Healthy. Happy. Claire took it. Her hand trembled. I've never seen her like this. Thomas's voice cracked. She used to climb out her bedroom window. Claire looked up. Why? Usually because our father told her not to. Claire almost smiled. That sounded like her mother. Then Claire looked at the signed document again. The smile disappeared. You knew she said she was innocent. Thomas said nothing. Didn't you? Yes. And you signed this anyway. Claire, I was 30 years old. The accounts, the reports, everything pointed to her. She told you. Thomas looked at her. Claire's eyes filled. She told you she didn't do it. Yes. You didn't believe her. Thomas's voice dropped. No. The single word landed harder than any excuse. Claire turned away. Thomas continued. The night she left, she came to my office. Stop. She begged me to look again. Stop. I told her if she was innocent, she should prove it. Claire turned. You told your own sister to prove she deserved to be believed. Thomas could not answer. She stepped closer. What else? Thomas's eyes were wet now. I told her not to call herself my sister until she could clear her name. Claire stared at him. The room seemed to disappear. Her mother working 2 jobs. Her mother pretending birthdays did not hurt. Her mother changing the subject whenever Claire asked about family. Her mother dying with a letter still hidden inside a recipe book. You didn't lose her, Claire whispered. Thomas looked at her. You pushed her out. He closed his eyes. Claire walked away. In the hallway, she pressed both hands against the wall. Charlotte followed. Claire. Don't. I'm not going to defend him. Claire wiped her face angrily. He had 30 years. I know. He has money. Investigators. Lawyers. People who find anything he wants. I know. He could have looked for her. Charlotte lowered her eyes. Yes. Claire stared at her. Then why should I care what that letter says? Charlotte looked through the doorway toward Thomas. You don't owe my father forgiveness. Claire said nothing. But your mother may still deserve the truth. That stopped her. Claire returned to the table. Not for Thomas. For Evelyn. She picked up the envelope. The paper felt thicker near one edge. Claire ran her finger beneath the lining. Something moved. What is this? She tore the inner seam. A smaller piece of paper slid out. Thomas recognized the handwriting. My father's. Claire read aloud. The originals are where Evelyn first learned to count. Charlotte frowned. What does that mean? Thomas shook his head. Claire did too. Then her phone vibrated. A photograph from Mrs. Carter. Owen had fallen asleep at the kitchen table. His head rested beside an old red cash box. Claire stared at it. Her mother used to keep coins in that box. She had taught Owen numbers by letting him sort them. Claire's heart began pounding. The cash box. Thomas looked at her. What? My mother taught Owen to count with an old red cash box. Charlotte grabbed her coat. Where is it? My apartment. Grant was no longer in the room. Thomas looked toward the empty hallway. Where's Grant? No one answered. And suddenly the old red cash box was no longer a memory. It was a target. Claire called Mrs. Carter before they reached the elevator. No answer. She called again. Nothing. Thomas reached for his phone. I'm sending security. No. He looked at her. No strangers rushing into my apartment and frightening Owen. Claire, if Grant is going there. Then we call the police. She did. By the time Claire reached her building, 2 officers were outside. She ran upstairs. The apartment door was closed. Mrs. Carter? It opened. Mrs. Carter stood there holding a rolling pin. Where have you been? Claire almost collapsed. Owen? Sleeping. Inside, Owen was not sleeping. He sat at the kitchen table folding grocery receipts into tiny paper stars. Claire rushed to him. He looked surprised when she hugged him. Are you okay? Yeah. Did anyone come here? No. Thomas stepped through the doorway. Owen looked at him. Who's that? Claire did not know how to answer. Thomas looked equally lost. His. She stopped. Thomas saved her. My name is Thomas. Owen nodded. You look sad. Thomas almost laughed. I suppose I am. Owen held up the paper star. You can have this. Thomas stared at it. What? My mom used to make them when people were sad. Claire looked at Owen. You remember that? A little. Thomas took the tiny star. His fingers began trembling. Evelyn used to do this when we were children. Owen looked at Claire. Who is Evelyn? The room became still. Claire sat beside him. Mom. Owen frowned. Mom's name was Evelyn? Yes. Thomas turned away and pressed a hand over his mouth. The red cash box sat on the shelf above the refrigerator. Claire pulled it down. The lock had been broken years ago. Inside were coins. Evelyn's old employee badge. A hospital bracelet. Drawings Claire had made as a child. A photograph of Owen as a baby. No financial records. Claire searched every corner. Nothing. Thomas looked beneath the lining. Empty. Claire sank into a chair. I was wrong. Later that night, after everyone had left except Charlotte, Claire's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Hello? Grant's voice. You should have taken the easy way out. Claire stood. Where are you? That doesn't matter. What did you do with the records? I want to help you. Claire laughed. You fired me. Suspended. You tried to take the letter. Because I knew what it could do. Claire went quiet. Grant continued. I can give you enough money to change your life. Claire's grip tightened. How much? It was the first honest question she had asked him. Grant named a number. Claire sat down. It was more money than she had earned in years. He continued. Your debts disappear. A better apartment. A private school fund for your brother. You never have to carry another tray. What do you want? Say the letter was misunderstood. Claire closed her eyes. That's all? Walk away. Her eyes moved toward Owen's bedroom. His shoes sat near the door. One sole had been repaired twice. Grant's voice softened. Truth doesn't pay rent, Claire. For a few seconds, she hated him because he was right. Truth had not paid for her mother's medicine. Truth had not kept Evelyn from working while sick. Truth had not bought groceries. Claire opened the red cash box again. She moved the hospital bracelet. Beneath it was a folded note. Her mother's handwriting. Claire opened it. I hope my children never have to become smaller to make powerful people comfortable. Claire closed her eyes. Then she spoke into the phone. No. Grant was silent. You should think about Owen. I am. She hung up. The next morning, the story leaked. Waitress claims secret connection to Whitmore family. By noon, strangers online were calling Claire a liar. By evening, the hotel suspended her indefinitely. Someone found an old photograph of her apartment building. A reporter waited outside. 2 days later, Owen came home from school silent. Claire knew immediately. What happened? Nothing. Owen. He stared at his shoes. A boy said Mom was a thief. Claire's heart broke. Owen looked up. What if telling the truth just makes everything worse? Claire opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Finally, she sat beside him. Sometimes it does. Owen frowned. She pulled him close. Before it gets better. But that night, Claire sat alone at the kitchen table wondering if she believed it. Thomas came the next morning. He placed an envelope on the table. Claire did not touch it. What's that? Enough to cover your expenses while this is resolved. She pushed it back. Take it. Claire. I needed an uncle 30 years ago. Thomas went still. My mother needed a brother. His face tightened. Money is the one thing you have that can't fix this. Thomas slowly took the envelope back. He did not defend himself. He simply said, "You're right." Charlotte arrived an hour later holding an enlarged photograph. Evelyn as a child. Arthur Whitmore beside her. Behind them was an old mechanical adding machine. Thomas stared at it. The original accounting room. Charlotte nodded. Where Evelyn first learned to count. The room had been sealed during renovations. They opened it that afternoon. A hidden compartment sat beneath the old adding machine. It was empty. Claire stared at the dust. Someone had beaten them there. A sound came from the doorway. Grant stood there. An old ledger was in his hand. Thomas stepped forward. Grant. Grant looked at Claire. Your mother should have left the past buried. He dropped the ledger into a metal trash barrel. Then he struck a match. Claire moved before anyone else. She grabbed the fire extinguisher from the wall. Grant dropped the match. Flames climbed the first page. Claire pulled the pin and sprayed the barrel. White powder exploded through the room. Charlotte hit the fire alarm. Thomas blocked the doorway as Grant tried to leave. Move. Thomas did not. You've spent 30 years protecting the wrong man. Grant's face twisted. You don't know anything about my father. Claire reached into the barrel. The ledger was wet. Blackened. Several pages crumbled when she touched them. No. Grant looked at her. It's over. Claire stared at the ruined paper. Then she saw numbers. Transfer reference numbers. The same kind written on Evelyn's pages behind the kitchen wall. Charlotte. Charlotte knelt beside her. What? The numbers. They compared the surviving ledger pages with Evelyn's handwritten list. Dates matched. Amounts matched. Reference numbers matched. Thomas looked at Grant. Robert stole the money. Grant said nothing. Didn't he? Still nothing. Then Grant laughed once. A tired, broken sound. He told me before he died. Thomas stared at him. You knew. He was dying. You knew Evelyn was innocent. Grant's eyes filled with anger. You think this is simple? Claire stood. Yes. Grant turned toward her. My father raised me alone. He packed my lunch every day. He came to every game. He worked until midnight and still woke up to drive me to school. Claire said nothing. He paid for college. He held my hand when my mother died. He was not a monster. Claire's voice stayed quiet. Neither was my mother. Grant looked away. He told me what happened. He said he was desperate. He thought he could replace the money before anyone noticed. So he blamed Evelyn. He panicked. And you protected him. Grant's jaw tightened. He was my father. Claire stepped closer. She was my mother. Silence. Grant looked at the ruined ledger. Exposing him now doesn't bring her back. No. Claire's eyes filled. But hiding what he did keeps hurting the people who are still here. Charlotte took photographs of every surviving page. The archived bank that once handled the foundation accounts had merged twice and changed names, but its historical records still existed. 2 days later, the confirmation arrived. Microfilm copies. Original transfers. Accounts linked to Robert Mercer. Evelyn had not taken $1. Claire sat at the kitchen table when Charlotte showed her. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she touched her mother's old badge. She was telling the truth. Thomas stood across the room. Yes. Claire closed her eyes. She had always known. But knowing and proving were different things. For 30 years, Evelyn's truth had lived only inside her own mouth. Now it existed on paper. Thomas announced that the truth would be revealed at the gala's closing ceremony. His attorneys objected. The board objected. The Whitmore Company could face lawsuits. The foundation's reputation could collapse. Thomas listened to all of them. Then said, "Good." His lawyer frowned. "Good. If our reputation can only survive because my sisters cannot, then we don't deserve it." Later, Thomas came to Claire alone. "I want to use Evelyn's name publicly." Claire looked at him. He waited. That mattered. He did not assume he had the right. "Tell the truth," Claire said. Thomas nodded. "All of it." The ballroom filled again that evening. Reporters waited near the stage. Employees stood along the back walls. Claire stayed near the service entrance. She did not want attention. Charlotte handed her a copy of Thomas's prepared statement. Claire read it. Robert Mercer. Grant Mercer. The hidden records. The stolen money. The destroyed evidence. She read it again. Something was missing. Thomas. His signature. His decision. His failure to believe Evelyn. Claire looked toward the stage. Thomas was already walking to the microphone. Applause filled the room. Claire stared at the prepared statement in her hands. And for the first time since the truth had begun to surface, she wondered if Thomas Whitmore was about to protect himself too. Thomas stood beneath the portrait of his grandfather. The ballroom became silent. He opened the prepared statement. For the past several days, questions have been raised regarding events connected to the Whitmore Children's Foundation 30 years ago. Claire watched from the back. Thomas continued reading. New evidence confirms that funds were illegally transferred by former Chief Financial Officer Robert Mercer. Grant stood between two security officers near the side of the room. Thomas spoke about the records. The accounts. The destroyed ledger. Claire's chest tightened. Then Thomas stopped. He looked down at the page. For several seconds, nobody moved. Thomas folded the statement. He placed it on the podium. My lawyers wrote the rest of this. A few people shifted. They did their job. Thomas looked toward Claire. But if I read it, I won't be doing mine. Claire stared at him. Thomas faced the room. 30 years ago, my sister Evelyn Whitmore was accused of stealing from this family. The room went completely still. She was innocent. A murmur moved through the crowd. Thomas continued. Robert Mercer stole the money. Grant lowered his head. But Robert Mercer is not the only person responsible for what happened to my sister. Claire stopped breathing. I signed a complaint that helped destroy her reputation. Cameras flashed. My sister told me she was innocent. Thomas's voice shook. I did not believe her. He gripped the podium. I chose documents over her word. Reputation over loyalty. Pride over love. Claire's eyes filled. For 30 years, people called my sister a thief because men with more power than she had found silence more convenient than truth. Thomas looked directly at Claire. I was one of those men. Nobody applauded. Nobody should have. Thomas continued. Evelyn Whitmore was innocent. He said her name slowly. Clearly. As chairman of this company and as her brother, I am formally correcting the record. He announced an independent investigation. Restitution. Employee protections. A complete review of the foundation. Then he stepped away from the microphone. Claire. Every face turned. Claire did not move. Thomas waited. He did not order. He did not gesture. He simply waited. Claire looked at the hotel staff along the back wall. Servers. Dishwashers. Housekeepers. People like her mother. She walked toward the stage. Thomas stepped aside. Claire reached into her pocket. Evelyn's old employee badge. She placed it beneath the founder's portrait. Then she looked at the room. My mother worked here after her family stopped believing her. Her voice was quiet. Nobody interrupted. She lost her name, her home, her family. Claire touched the badge. But the people in the kitchen gave her a job. She looked toward the employees. They knew her before anyone asked whether she was useful to them. Claire turned toward the Whitmore family portraits. My mother belonged here before any of you decided she didn't. Silence. Then the elderly woman Claire had saved on the first night stood up. She began clapping. One of the dishwashers joined. Then a waitress. Then every employee at the back of the room. The applause spread. Claire looked at Thomas. He did not try to hug her. He asked one question. Can I stand beside you? Claire looked at him for a long moment. Then nodded. After the ballroom emptied, Thomas found Claire near the old fountain. He held a small wooden box. I found these in my father's private storage. Claire opened it. Letters. Dozens of them. All unopened. All addressed to Thomas. Evelyn's handwriting. Thomas looked broken. I never saw them. Claire picked up the final envelope. For Thomas, when you're ready to know my daughter. She looked at him. Thomas whispered, I think I've been 30 years late. They opened Evelyn's final letter together. Not in the ballroom. Not beneath cameras. At Claire's kitchen table. Owen was asleep. The old red cash box sat nearby. Thomas unfolded the paper. His hands trembled too much to read. Claire read instead. Thomas. I don't know if this letter will ever reach you. I don't know if I want it to. Some days I miss my brother. Other days I remember what he said, and I become angry all over again. Both things can be true. Claire stopped. Thomas looked down. She continued. I have a daughter. Her name is Claire. She is stubborn. So you would probably like her. She asks too many questions. So father would not. Claire laughed through tears. Thomas smiled. The letter continued. I never stopped loving you. But love does not make what happened disappear. I hope one day Claire can meet you without needing anything from you. If she ever stands in front of you, don't tell her where she belongs. Ask her where she wants to stand. Claire lowered the letter. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Months later, Thomas offered Claire a house. She said no. He offered her money. She said no again. He finally asked, then what can I do? Claire answered, listen. So he did. The old staff dining room at the Whitmore Grand was renovated. Not into another ballroom. Not into a private lounge. It became the Evelyn Whitmore Center for hotel workers and families. Emergency childcare. Education grants. Legal help. Crisis support. Claire agreed to help run it, but only after insisting on a real salary, independent authority, and a board that included hotel employees. Thomas agreed. Evelyn's family portrait hung on one wall. Her employee badge hung beside it. Claire insisted on both. She was both people, she said. Thomas slowly became part of their lives. Slowly. He attended Owen's school play and arrived 40 minutes early. He tried to assemble a bookshelf without instructions and built it backward. He learned that Claire hated expensive surprise gifts. He burned pancakes. Charlotte started coming for Sunday dinner. The first time Owen accidentally called Thomas Uncle Tom, everyone became so quiet that Owen looked around and asked, what? Nobody made a big deal out of it. That was what made it matter. Grant faced charges for destroying evidence and concealing records. Claire never visited him. She never celebrated what happened to him either. She understood one thing about Grant. He had spent years believing that loving his father meant protecting every version of him. Claire refused to make the same mistake. Love was not pretending people had done no wrong. Love was telling the truth and deciding what came after. 1 year after the night Claire opened the missing letter, the hotel held an event inside the new employee center. Claire stood near the entrance. Across the room, Thomas was arguing with Owen about whether paper stars counted as decorations. Charlotte was laughing. A nervous young dishwasher appeared at the doorway. He looked around. His uniform was too big. He took one step inside. A supervisor stopped him. "This event is for invited guests." The boy immediately stepped back. Claire saw his face. She remembered a gallery. A manager. A finger pointing toward a door. "You don't belong here." Claire walked over. "He's with me." The supervisor apologized and left. The young dishwasher looked embarrassed. "I can go." Claire smiled. "Come in." He hesitated. Claire held the door wider. "We've been waiting for you." Across the room, Thomas heard her. He smiled. Owen sat beside Evelyn's photograph. He folded a paper star from an old copy of the Centennial Gala menu. Then he placed it beneath her picture. Claire watched him. 4 years, she had believed the missing letter had brought her a family. It had not. The letter revealed blood. It exposed a lie. It restored her mother's name. But family came later. In burned pancakes. School plays. Arguments. Apologies. In showing up again after showing up once was no longer impressive. Claire never forgot what Thomas had done. Thomas never asked her to. That was part of how they learned to love each other. Some doors are closed to protect people. Others are closed because powerful people are afraid of who might walk through them. And sometimes the person standing outside was never the one who didn't belong. Sometimes the room simply had to become worthy of them.